I, 26F, began to suspect my husband was not the man I married about 6 months into our second year together. It was not one big thing. It was a collection of small, sharp things, like finding a shard of glass in a soft blanket. At first, you think you imagined it. Then it keeps pricking you until you have to look. His name is Mark, and he had always been the center of my world. I loved him with a kind of simple, trusting devotion that I thought was the foundation of our life. That trust began to erode slowly, quietly. It started with his phone. It used to lie on the kitchen counter, open and unassuming. Now it was always face down, or in his pocket. He would take it with him, even to go to the bathroom. A little ping from a notification would make him jump, and he would angle the screen away from me. When I asked who was texting him so late, he would always have a ready answer. It was his boss. It was a group chat for work. It was his mother. The answers were always plausible, but they felt rehearsed. Then came the late nights at the office. Mark was ambitious, I knew that. I had always supported his career. But the frequency increased from once a month to 3 times a week. He would come home smelling faintly of something other than our apartment, a perfume that was not mine or the soap from his office bathroom. It was sweet and floral. I once commented on it, just a light, breezy question. "You smell nice tonight," I said, trying to sound casual. He stiffened for a fraction of a second. "It must be from someone at the office. You know how some people overdo it with their perfume," he said with a small, unconvincing laugh. He did not meet my eyes. The distance between us grew in the space he created with these small deceptions. Our conversations became superficial. I would ask about his day, and he would give me a one-sentence summary. He stopped asking about mine altogether. In bed, he would turn away from me, claiming he was exhausted from work. The easy intimacy we once shared had evaporated, leaving a cold, sterile silence in its place. I felt a deep, gnawing loneliness even when he was sitting right next to me on the sofa. One night, I lay awake long after he had fallen asleep, his back to me. The thought came to me, clear and cold as ice. What if I was wrong? What if the stress of his job was genuinely getting to him, and my suspicion was pushing him further away? I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to believe in the man I had promised to spend my life with. So I made a decision. I would not confront him. I would not accuse him. Instead, I would do the opposite. I would become the most perfect, devoted wife he could ever imagine. I would remove every possible excuse he could have for straying. I would be supportive, loving, and patient. I would cook his favorite meals. I would not question his late nights. I would greet him with a smile no matter what. It was a test of his loyalty. I was giving him a chance to come back to me, to choose our marriage. And just in case my gut feeling was right, I bought a small, discreet digital voice recorder. It was no bigger than my thumb. I told myself it was for insurance, a way to protect my own sanity. I needed to know if the monster in my head was real or just a shadow. The next morning, I started my experiment. I woke up early and made him a big breakfast, his favorite. He was surprised. "What's all this for?" he asked, looking at the spread of eggs, bacon, and pancakes. I smiled, a bright, practiced smile. "I just wanted to do something nice for you. You've been working so hard lately," I said. He seemed pleased, but also a little wary. He ate quickly, gave me a peck on the cheek, and left for work. Before he left, while he was in the shower, I took the tiny recorder and slipped it under the passenger seat of his car. I secured it with a small piece of tape. My hands were shaking. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I was spying on my own husband, but the feeling was quickly replaced by a cold sense of purpose. This was not an act of malice. It was an act of self-preservation. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. That day was one of the longest of my life. I tried to keep busy, cleaning the apartment, reading a book, calling my friend Lena. But my mind was in that car with him, listening to every word, every sound. I imagined all the possible outcomes. Maybe I would hear nothing but him listening to the radio or talking to his mother. Maybe this entire exercise would prove me to be a paranoid, insecure wife. I almost hoped for that outcome. It would be humiliating, but far less painful than the alternative. When Mark came home that evening, he was in a better mood than he had been in months. He brought me flowers. "I was thinking about you today," he said, handing me the bouquet of lilies. My heart did a painful little flip. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe my plan was already working. Maybe all he needed was a little more affection from me. We had a pleasant dinner. I did not ask about his day in detail. I just listened as he talked about a project at work. He seemed more engaged, more present. After he went to sleep, I slipped out of the apartment. I told him I was going to the all-night pharmacy to get some aspirin. My real destination was his car. The street was quiet and dark. I fumbled with the car keys, my heart pounding in my chest. I opened the passenger door, reached under the seat, and my fingers found the small, cold device. I pulled it free and hurried back inside, clutching it in my hand as if it were a precious, dangerous jewel. Back in our apartment, I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the floor, my back against the cool tile. I plugged the small earphones into the recorder and took a deep, shaky breath. I pressed play. At first, it was just the sound of the engine, the radio, the turn signal clicking. He made a phone call to a colleague discussing work. It was all normal, boring stuff. I started to feel a small bit of relief. Maybe I was crazy after all. Then I heard his voice change. He had ended the call with his colleague and had dialed another number. A woman answered. "Hey you," she said, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey," Mark replied, and the tone he used sent a chill down my spine. It was a soft, intimate tone he had not used with me in a very long time. "Are we still on for later?" she asked. "Of course," he said. "I just have to get through this dinner with Clara. She is being weirdly nice today. It is kind of suffocating." I felt the air leave my lungs. Suffocating. My attempt to be a good wife, my gesture of love, was suffocating to him. The woman on the phone laughed. It was a light, musical laugh. "Poor you," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Just think about tonight. I will make it all better." My mind went blank. I could not process the words. It was like listening to a scene from a movie, not my own life. "I cannot wait," Mark said, his voice low and husky. "I will text you when I am leaving my place. Okay."
"Wear that blue shirt I like," she said.
"Anything for you, Sarah," he replied.
Sarah.
I knew a Sarah. She was a friend of a friend, someone we had met at a few parties. She was beautiful, outgoing, and single. I had never thought twice about her. Now, her name was burned into my brain. The rest of the recording was just more of the same. They flirted, they made plans, they talked about their day. He complained about me a little more, painting me as a needy, demanding wife. Every word was a stab to my heart. He was creating a narrative for her where he was the victim, trapped in a loveless marriage. And I was the villain. Me, the person who had spent the entire day trying to be the perfect partner for him. I turned off the recorder and sat in the silence of the bathroom, the earphones still in my ears. The world felt like it had tilted on its axis. The man I loved, the life I had built, it was all a lie. The pain was so intense, it was physical. I felt a tightness in my chest, a hollowness in my stomach. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm into the bedroom, wake him up, and throw the recorder at his face. But I did not. Some cold, calm part of my brain took over. A confrontation now would solve nothing. He would deny it. He would call me crazy for recording him. He would twist it around and make it my fault. I had the proof, but it was just one conversation. He could claim it was a misunderstanding, a joke. I needed more. I needed undeniable, irrefutable evidence. I needed to understand the full extent of his betrayal before I acted. I deleted the recording from the device. I knew it was a risk, but I could not have it in the house. The memory of it was seared into my mind anyway. I would just have to get more. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, my face pale. But my expression was not one of defeat. It was one of resolve. My little experiment was over. Now a different kind of project was beginning. I went back to bed and slipped under the covers. Mark was sleeping soundly, oblivious. I lay there, inches from him, but feeling like we were on different planets. I did not see a husband anymore. I saw a stranger, a liar. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I had to keep pretending. I had to continue being the devoted, loving wife. I had to smile and cook and act like everything was perfect. My performance had to be flawless. Because now it was not just about saving my marriage. It was about uncovering the truth and preparing for the war that was to come. The game had changed, and I was going to play it to win. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. The grief was still there, a heavy weight in my chest, but it was accompanied by a steely determination. I put the recorder back in his car before he woke up. I made him coffee, just the way he liked it. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye. It was the hardest thing I had ever had to do. Every act of affection felt like a betrayal of myself. But I knew it was necessary. To catch a liar, you had to let them think they were getting away with it. For the next few weeks, I lived a double life. On the outside, I was Clara, the doting wife. I hosted a dinner party for his work friends. I went with him to his parents' house for Sunday lunch. I listened patiently as his mother, Diana, went on and on about how lucky I was to have a son as successful and hardworking as Mark. I just smiled and agreed with her, the irony a bitter taste in my mouth. Diana had never fully warmed up to me. She made subtle comments that always made me feel like I was not quite good enough for her perfect son. Now, I wondered if she knew. Did she have any idea the kind of man her son really was? Every night, I would retrieve the recorder from his car. I would listen to the day's recordings with a kind of detached horror. The conversations with Sarah became a regular feature of my evenings. I learned their routines. They met for lunch twice a week at a small Italian restaurant on the other side of town. He would call her on his drive home, their conversations full of shared jokes and whispered endearments. He told her he loved her. Hearing those 3 words, meant for another woman, spoken in the familiar cadence of my husband's voice, was like being physically struck. I started a secret journal. I bought a simple notebook and hid it at the bottom of my winter clothes storage box. In it, I documented everything. I wrote down the date, the time of the recording, and a summary of the conversation. I noted every lie he told me. "I have a late meeting with the team from Chicago," he would say. My journal entry for that day would read, "Lie, meeting with Chicago team." Truth, dinner with Sarah at the Olive Branch. I cross-referenced his credit card statements, which I could access online. The charges matched the locations he and Sarah discussed. The evidence was piling up, creating a detailed, damning portrait of his deception. One evening, I was listening to a recording from that afternoon. He was talking to Sarah, and they were planning a weekend trip. "We could go to that little bed and breakfast by the lake," she suggested. "The one we talked about. I would love that," Mark said. "But I need a good excuse. Clara will be suspicious if I am gone for a whole weekend. Tell her it is a work conference," Sarah said dismissively. "She believes everything you say." That line cut deep. She was right. I had believed him. I had trusted him completely. And they were both laughing at me for it. Then Mark said something that made my blood run cold. "I need to be careful with the money, too. I have been moving some of our savings into a separate account. Just in case things get messy." He was not just cheating on me. He was planning to leave me. And he was stealing from our shared future to fund his new life with her. The betrayal was deeper and more calculated than I could have ever imagined. It was not a simple affair. It was a conspiracy. I needed to talk to someone. The weight of this secret was crushing me. I called my best friend, Lena. We had been friends since college, and she was the most practical, level-headed person I knew. I asked her to come over, telling her I just needed a friend. When she arrived, I made her a cup of tea, and then I just broke down. I told her everything. The suspicions, the perfect wife act, the recorder, the conversations, the secret bank account. I talked for almost an hour, the words pouring out of me in a torrent of pain and anger. Lena listened patiently, her expression growing more and more grim. She did not interrupt me once. When I was finished, she just sat there for a moment, silent. Then she reached out and took my hand. "Clara, this is so much worse than I thought," she said, her voice soft. I am so sorry you are going through this. What do I do, Lena? I asked, my voice trembling. Do I confront him? Do I just leave? No, she said firmly. You do not do anything rash. He is already one step ahead of you, moving money. If you confront him now, he will just deny. He will lock you out of the accounts and make your life hell. I knew she was right. A part of me wanted the satisfaction of a screaming match, of seeing the look on his face when he knew I knew. But my logical side understood that would be a strategic mistake. You need to keep gathering evidence, Lena continued. You have the recordings. That is amazing. But you need more. You need the account number for that secret bank account. You need to know how much he has taken. You need to build a case so strong that when you finally do confront him, he has nowhere to run. Her words calmed me. She was giving me a plan, a path forward through the emotional chaos. You need to talk to a lawyer, Clara. A good one. Just for a consultation. You need to know your rights and your options. The next day, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer Lena recommended. I was nervous, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I took my journal with me, a detailed log of my husband's infidelity and financial deception. The lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davis, listened to my story without judgment. She looked through my notes, her expression serious. The recordings are a bit of a gray area depending on state laws, she told me. But the financial records are not. The fact that he is moving marital assets into a secret account is financial fraud. That is your leverage, she explained the legal process, the steps I would need to take. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of power. I was not just a victim. I was building a case. I was taking control of my own future. Ms. Davis gave me a list of documents I should try to gather. Bank statements, tax returns, investment information. Do it quietly, she warned. Do not let him know you are looking. The element of surprise is your greatest asset. I left her office feeling empowered. The path ahead was going to be difficult, but it was clear. I had a mission. That night, my performance as the devoted wife was Oscar-worthy. I made Mark his favorite steak dinner. I asked him about his work conference for the upcoming weekend, my voice full of genuine-sounding interest. It is a leadership seminar, he said, looking me right in the eye. It is a really big opportunity for me. The ease with which he lied was breathtaking. He felt no guilt, no remorse. I will miss you, I said, forcing a sad little smile. I will miss you too, he said, leaning in to kiss me. I had to fight every instinct in my body not to recoil. I felt like I was kissing a snake. While he was in the shower, I went into his home office. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I knew his laptop password. He had told it to me ages ago and had never bothered to change it, confident in my trusting nature. I quickly logged in and started searching. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Personal Finances. There it was. A statement for a bank account I had never seen before. The account was in his name only, and he had been transferring thousands of dollars from our joint savings account into it every month for the past 4 months. The total was already staggering. I took pictures of the statements with my phone. I also found emails between him and Sarah, confirming their travel plans for the weekend. They were not going to a leadership seminar. They were going to a luxury spa resort. I photographed those as well. I had it all. The affair, the financial deception, the premeditated lies. I logged out of the computer and went back to the living room, my hands shaking but my mind sharp. He had no idea what was coming. He saw a dutiful wife. He had no idea he was living with the woman who was going to dismantle his entire life. The next few days were a blur of quiet preparation. I continued my act, being the supportive wife who was so proud of her husband's big work opportunity. I even helped him pack, making sure to include the blue shirt Sarah liked so much. You will look so handsome giving your presentation in this, I said, folding it carefully. He just smiled, completely oblivious. The condescension in his eyes was almost unbearable. He thought I was a fool. He thought I was simple. He had no idea that I saw everything. While he was gone for the weekend with his mistress, I was busy. I met with Ms. Davis again, and gave her copies of all the new evidence I had found. She was impressed. "This is a slam dunk, Clara," she said. "He will not know what hit him. We formulated a plan. The confrontation needed to be strategic. It needed to happen in a setting where he could not easily escape or control the narrative." An opportunity presented itself in the form of his parents' 40th wedding anniversary party. It was scheduled for the weekend after his return. The entire family would be there. His aunts, uncles, cousins. And his mother, Diana. I had a new recording that was particularly damning. It was from the day before he left for his conference. He was on the phone with his mother. "Clara is being so helpful with my packing," he said, laughing. "She has no idea," Diana had laughed with him. "Well, you need a little happiness, Mark. That girl has always been a bit of a drag on you." "Sarah sounds like a breath of fresh air." "She is," Mark had agreed. "I just need to handle the timing right. I want to make sure I am financially secure before I pull the plug on the marriage." "Of course, dear," Diana had said, her voice full of maternal approval. "You just make sure you protect what is yours. You earned it." Hearing his own mother encourage him to deceive me and steal from me was a new level of betrayal. It solidified my resolve. This was not just about Mark anymore. It was about Diana, too. They were co-conspirators. They both deserved to be exposed. The anniversary party was the perfect stage. Their whole family, who saw them as this perfect, respectable unit, would be there to witness the truth. When Mark came back from his trip, he was glowing. He talked endlessly about the seminar, making up details about speakers and workshops. I listened, nodding and smiling, my mind a cold, calculating machine. I asked him if he had a good time. "It was productive," he said, trying to sound professional. "But I am glad to be home." I almost choked on the hypocrisy of it all. The day of the anniversary party arrived. I picked out my dress carefully. It was a simple, elegant navy blue dress. I wanted to look composed, strong. I was not going to be the hysterical, crying wife. I was going to be the calm, collected woman who held all the cards. As we drove to his parents' house, he was chatty and relaxed. "It will be good to see everyone," he said. "Mom has been planning this for months." "Yes, it should be a very memorable evening," I replied, my voice even. He had no idea how memorable it was going to be. The party was in full swing when we arrived. The backyard was decorated with fairy lights and balloons. About 30 family members were mingling, laughing, and drinking champagne. Mark's father, Robert, a quiet, decent man I had always liked, greeted us with a warm hug. Diana, on the other hand, gave me a cool, brief embrace before turning all her attention to Mark. "There is my handsome son," she gushed. "Everyone has been asking for you." For the first hour, I played my part. I made small talk with his cousins. I helped his aunt carry a tray of appetizers. I watched Mark as he worked the crowd, the charming, successful son and husband. He and his mother were a team, standing close together, sharing knowing glances. They looked so proud, so untouchable. I felt a surge of cold anger. Their arrogance was about to be their downfall. The time for toasts arrived. Robert gave a lovely, heartfelt speech about his 40 years with Diana. Then a few other family members shared fond memories. It was all very wholesome and sweet. Then Mark stood up, champagne glass in hand. He was going to give a toast to his parents. This was my moment. This was the opening I had been waiting for. He started his speech, talking about what a wonderful example of marriage his parents had been. He talked about love, trust, and loyalty. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. He then turned to me and smiled. "And I am so lucky to have my own amazing wife, Clara, by my side. She is the most supportive and trusting partner a man could ask for." The crowd murmured in approval. He raised his glass to me. I just looked at him, my expression unreadable. He finished his toast, and people began to clap. Before the applause died down, I stood up. A hush fell over the group. They were probably expecting me to say a few words as well, to thank my wonderful husband. Mark looked at me, a little surprised, but still smiling. His smile would not last long. "Thank you, Mark," I said, my voice clear and steady. That was a beautiful speech, especially the parts about trust and loyalty. It has got me thinking. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. You mentioned you were at a leadership seminar last weekend. It sounded so important. Tell us all a little more about it. Mark's smile faltered. He looked confused. Well, it was just a corporate thing, honey. Pretty boring stuff. Oh, I do not think it was boring at all, I said, my voice still light and conversational. In fact, I think it sounds a lot more interesting than you were letting on. For example, did the leadership seminar take place at the Lakeside Spa and Resort? The color drained from his face. Diana, standing next to him, shot me a look of pure venom. Clara, what are you doing? She hissed. This is not the time or the place. I think it is the perfect time and place, I replied, turning my gaze to her. Since you were so involved in the planning, I pulled my phone out of my small clutch purse. You see, I have been doing a lot of listening lately, and it is amazing what you can learn. What are you talking about? Mark said, his voice rising in panic. You are making a scene, am I? I said. Let's listen to a recording, shall we? I have one here of you on the phone with your mistress, Sarah. You are planning your romantic weekend getaway. The one you told me was a work conference. The guests were all staring, their mouths agape. Robert looked utterly bewildered. I pressed play. The sound of Mark's voice filled the quiet backyard, clear as day. I cannot wait for this weekend, his recorded voice said. I just need to get through this charade with Clara. Then came Sarah's laugh. Poor baby. Just tell her you will miss her. She will buy it. I stopped the recording. The silence was absolute. Mark was staring at me, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. You recorded me? He sputtered. That is illegal. What is illegal, Mark? I asked calmly. Lying to your wife. Committing adultery? Or maybe the part where you have been stealing money from our joint savings account and hiding it in a secret account. Because I have the statements for that, too. I looked over at Diana, whose face had gone pale. And you, Diana.
You knew all about it.
In fact, you encouraged it. You told him to protect his money. You called me a drag on your precious son. I did not need to play the recording of their conversation. The look of pure, unadulterated guilt on her face was confirmation enough. Robert finally spoke, his voice low and trembling with rage. He was not looking at me. He was looking at his wife and son. Is this true? He asked them. Is any of this true? Mark and Diana were both speechless. They just stood there, exposed and humiliated in front of their entire family. They had nowhere to hide. Yes, it is true, I said, answering for them. I turned to Mark. Our marriage is over. My lawyer will be in touch, and he will have copies of everything. The recordings, the bank statements, the emails. Everything. I looked around at the shocked faces of his family. I did not feel triumphant. I just felt a profound sense of relief. The truth was finally out. The burden of my secret was gone. I placed my wedding ring on the table next to the anniversary cake. Happy anniversary, I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. Then I turned around and walked away. I did not look back. I could hear the eruption of voices behind me, accusations and denials, but it was all just noise. I walked out of the house, got into my car, and drove away, leaving the ruins of my old life behind me. I was free. The days following the party were a strange mix of chaos and calm. My phone was bombarded with calls and texts from Mark's family. Some were apologetic, others were angry and accusatory. I ignored them all. I changed my number. My focus was on the legal process and rebuilding my life. Mark tried to contact me incessantly. He left desperate voicemails, swinging wildly between begging for forgiveness and threatening me. You have ruined my life, Clara, he yelled in one message. You will regret this. I saved the message and forwarded it to Ms. Davis. It was just more evidence for our case. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal for him. Faced with the overwhelming evidence of financial fraud and infidelity, his lawyer advised him to settle quickly. He had no choice. The recordings, while not admissible in court for the divorce itself in our state, were leverage. Ms. Davis made it clear that we were prepared to use them in a separate civil suit for the fraudulent transfer of assets if he fought us.
He caved.
I got the house, a significant portion of his hidden savings, and generous spousal support. He had tried to leave me with nothing, and in the end, he was the one who lost almost everything. The social fallout for him and his mother was just as severe. The story of what happened at the anniversary party spread like wildfire through their social circle. Diana, who had always prided herself on her family's perfect image, was mortified. Many of her friends and family members were disgusted by her complicity. She and Robert were barely speaking. I heard from one of Mark's cousins that Robert had moved into the guest room. The perfect marriage they had been celebrating was a sham, just like mine. Mark's career also took a hit. Sarah, it turned out, worked for a company that was a major client of his firm. When the story got out, her company pulled their account, citing a lack of professional conduct. Mark was demoted. He lost his prestige, his money, and his reputation. Sarah, I heard, broke up with him shortly after. She had been attracted to the successful, charming man he pretended to be, not the disgraced, bitter man he had become. I had a few final conversations that helped me close that chapter of my life. One was with Robert, Mark's father. He called me about a month after the party. "Clara, I do not know what to say," he started, his voice heavy with shame. "I am so deeply sorry for what my son and my wife did to you. There is no excuse for their behavior." "Thank you, Robert," I said, and I meant it. "It means a lot to hear you say that. I always thought you were a wonderful woman," he continued. "You deserved so much better. I hope you find happiness." That conversation gave me a sense of peace. Not everyone in his family was like him. Another conversation was with Lena. We were sitting in my new, smaller apartment, drinking wine. The space was all mine. It was filled with my things, my colors, my personality.
It was a sanctuary.
"How are you feeling?" she asked gently. "Honestly," I said, taking a sip of wine, "I feel light. For months, I was carrying this heavy, ugly secret. I was pretending to be someone I was not. Now I can just be me. It is a strange feeling. You are so strong, Clara," she said. "I do not know if I could have done what you did. The patience, the planning. It was brilliant. It was not about being brilliant," I said. "It was about survival. He was going to destroy me. I just decided to fight back." The final piece of closure came in the form of a letter. It was from Mark. It was not sent through his lawyer, but to my new address, which I assume he got from his father. It was a long, rambling letter. He wrote about how sorry he was, how he had made a terrible mistake. He said he still loved me, and that he would do anything to get me back. He blamed his mother, he blamed Sarah, he blamed the stress of his job. He blamed everyone but himself. I read the letter once, then I tore it into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. There was nothing he could say that would ever change what he did. He was not sorry for cheating. He was sorry he got caught. He was sorry he had to face the consequences. His words were as empty as his promises had been. It took time to heal. The betrayal left deep scars. There were nights when I would lie awake, the memory of his lies echoing in my head. But with each passing day, the pain lessened. I focused on myself. I reconnected with old friends. I threw myself into my work. I started taking a pottery class, something I had always wanted to do. I found joy in the simple things. A quiet morning with a cup of coffee, a long walk in the park, the freedom of making my own choices without having to consider anyone else. I learned a lot from that experience. I learned that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. I learned that some people will wear a mask of love while sharpening a knife behind their back. But the most important thing I learned was about my own strength. I had been underestimated, not just by Mark and his mother, but by myself. I had thought of myself as soft, as a trusting soul. And I was. But I was also a fighter. When pushed into a corner, I did not crumble. I strategized. I gathered my forces. I chose my battlefield. He thought my silence was weakness. He saw my devotion as a sign of my naivety. He never once suspected that the quiet, dutiful wife serving him dinner was the same woman meticulously documenting his downfall. He never realized that while he was whispering lies into another woman's ear, I was the one who was truly listening. And I had heard everything. The quiet resolve that had guided me through those dark months became my new foundation. It was a strength born not of anger, but of clarity. I had seen the worst of people, the casual cruelty and the calculated deception, and I had survived. More than that, I had triumphed. I had reclaimed my life, my finances, and my sense of self. The recordings were long gone. The journal was burned. I did not need them anymore. The evidence was no longer necessary, because the verdict was in. He was guilty, and I was free. Months turned into a year. I settled into a new rhythm. My pottery class became a passion, and I started selling some of my pieces at a local market. It was not about the money. It was about creating something beautiful with my own hands, something that was wholly mine. I made new friends, people who knew me as the independent, creative Clara, not as Mark's wife. My past was a part of my story, but it no longer defined my present. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the market, arranging my mugs and bowls on the display table. A woman approached, her face familiar. It took me a moment to place her. It was one of Mark's cousins, a woman named Emily, who had always been kind to me. She looked hesitant. "Clara? I almost did not recognize you," she said. "You look happy." "I am," I said with a genuine smile. "It is good to see you, Emily." She lingered for a moment, looking at my pottery. "I just wanted to say, what you did, it was incredible," she said in a low voice. "The whole family, we were all so blind. Mark and my Aunt Diana had everyone fooled for years. It was a difficult situation," I said, not wanting to rehash the drama. "Difficult does not even cover it," she said with a short, bitter laugh. The fallout was biblical. Uncle Robert is still so angry. And Diana, she is not the queen bee of the family anymore. People look at her differently now. They see her for what she is. She told me that Mark had ended up moving to a different city. He could not handle the shame and the professional consequences. He had tried to start over, but his reputation had followed him. "He is a ghost of the man he used to be," Emily said. "He blames you, of course. He tells everyone you are this vindictive monster. I can live with that," I said calmly. "Good for you," she said, her eyes full of respect. She bought a small blue vase for me before she left. "This is beautiful," she said. "Keep making beautiful things, Clara." Her words stayed with me. That was what I was doing now. I was taking the broken pieces of my past and creating something new, something strong and beautiful. The life Mark had tried to destroy had become the fertile ground for my own reinvention. The final, unexpected encounter happened a few months later. I was in a coffee shop downtown sketching a new design in my notebook. The bell on the door jingled, and I glanced up. It was Sarah. She was alone. Our eyes met for a fleeting second. A flicker of recognition, then panic, crossed her face. She immediately turned to leave, but hesitated. She looked different than I remembered. The confident, radiant woman from the parties was gone. She looked tired, her shoulders slumped. She walked over to my table. I felt a jolt of adrenaline, but I remained calm. I was not afraid of her. I had nothing to be afraid of. "Clara," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I do not expect you to talk to me. I wanted to say I am sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her. I did not feel anger or hatred. I just felt a distant kind of pity. "Sorry for what, Sarah?" I asked, my tone neutral. "For helping my husband lie to me? For laughing at me behind my back? For helping him plan to steal my money?" Her face crumpled. "For all of it," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I was a fool. He told me you were cold, that your marriage was over in all but name. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. He was very convincing," I said. "It was not an excuse, just a statement of fact." "He ruined my life too," she said softly. "The scandal, my job, my reputation. He threw me away the second things got difficult. He told me it was my fault, that I had been too pushy." I just nodded slowly. Of course he did. That was his pattern. Nothing was ever his fault. He was a black hole of blame, sucking everyone else into his own moral vacuum. I am not telling you this for sympathy, she said, quickly wiping a tear from her cheek. I just wanted you to know that I see him now for who he really is. You were right to expose him. She turned to leave. Sarah, I said, and she stopped. For what it is worth, I hope you can build a new life for yourself. A better one. She gave me a small, grateful nod, and then walked out of the coffee shop. Seeing her, hearing her story, was the final piece of the puzzle. It confirmed what I already knew. Mark was not capable of love or loyalty. He was a user. He used me for stability and the image of a perfect life. He used Sarah for excitement and an ego boost. He used his own mother to enable his bad behavior. In the end, he was the one who was truly alone. He had burned every bridge, betrayed every trust. He was left with nothing but his own lies. I went back to my sketchbook. I was no longer interested in their drama. Their lives were their own mess to clean up. My life was here, in this quiet coffee shop, with my notebook full of new ideas. I was building, not destroying. I had faced the ugliest parts of my life and had not let them make me ugly. I had taken the pain and transformed it into strength. The experience with Mark had been a fire. It had burned down the life I thought I wanted, the person I thought I was. But from those ashes, I had emerged as someone stronger, someone more authentic, someone who knew her own worth. I no longer needed anyone else's approval. I no longer feared being alone. My own company had become a comfort, my own thoughts a source of strength. Sometimes, late at night, I would think about that small digital recorder. Such a tiny object, yet it had the power to change everything. It had been my only weapon in a silent war. It had captured the truth in whispers and lies. But I knew the real power had not been in the device itself. The real power had been in my decision to listen. To listen to the evidence, to listen to my instincts, and finally, to listen to my own heart telling me that I deserved better. My life now is quiet, and it is peaceful. It is full of my work, my friends, and the simple joy of a life lived honestly. I never saw Mark again. I never heard from Diana. Their chapter in my life is closed, the book firmly shut. They became ghosts, cautionary tales in a story that was no longer about them.
It was about me.
It was about a woman who refused to be a victim, who took control of her own narrative, and who wrote her own, much happier, ending. And in the quiet moments of my new life, I often smile. Because he thought I was just a devoted wife, playing a part. He never understood that I was the director of the entire show. As time went on, my small pottery business grew. What started as a hobby became a modest, but steady source of income. It gave me a sense of pride I had not realized I was missing. Every piece I sold was a testament to my resilience, a small victory. My apartment, once a symbol of my escape, became a true home, filled with plants, books, and the comfortable clutter of a life being lived. Lena remained my rock. We had weekly dinners, and our friendship deepened even more. One evening, she brought over a bottle of expensive champagne. "What are we celebrating?" I asked, laughing. "We are celebrating 2 years," she said, popping the cork. 2 years since you walked out of that party and took your life back. I was stunned. I had not even realized the anniversary was approaching. It felt like a lifetime ago. We toasted, and the champagne was crisp and cold. "Have you ever thought about dating again?" she asked, her tone gentle. I considered the question. For a long time, the idea had been unthinkable. The thought of trusting someone again, of being that vulnerable, was terrifying. "I do not know," I said honestly. "I am happy as I am. I am not lonely. I know you are not," she said. "But you deserve to have love in your life, Clara. Real love. The kind you give, not the kind you were given." Her words planted a seed. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was ready to open my heart again, cautiously this time. Not because I needed someone to complete me, but because I was whole on my own and had something to share. A few weeks later, a man who ran the neighboring stall at the market, a kind carpenter named Ben, asked me out for coffee. I was hesitant, but I remembered Lena's words.
I said yes.
It was not a whirlwind romance. It was slow and steady and built on a foundation of honesty. I told him, in broad strokes, about my previous marriage. I did not dwell on the ugly details, but I was clear about the betrayal I had experienced. I needed him to know that trust was a fragile thing for me. He listened patiently. He did not push for more details. He just said, "I am sorry you went through that. You did not deserve it." Ben was the opposite of Mark in every way. He was quiet where Mark was flashy. He was sincere where Mark was charming. He was a man who found joy in his work, in nature, in simple conversations. There were no games, no masks. With him, I felt safe. We took things at my pace, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt the stirrings of a genuine connection, one that was not based on a performance or an ideal, but on mutual respect and understanding. One day, Ben and I were driving upstate to go for a hike. He was telling me a funny story about a client, and I was laughing, truly laughing, a deep, unburdened sound. In that moment, a wave of gratitude washed over me. I looked out the window at the passing scenery, and I thought about the Clara from 3 years ago, the woman sitting in a dark bathroom, listening to a recording that was shattering her world. I wished I could go back and tell her that it would be okay. More than okay. I would tell her that the pain was a crucible and that she would emerge from it stronger and more herself than she had ever been. Life has a way of coming full circle. About a year into my relationship with Ben, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. It was from Emily, Mark's cousin. I was surprised she had sent it to me, but I was touched. I had not seen any of the family since that fateful party. I was not sure if I should go. I talked it over with Ben. "Do you want to go?" he asked simply. "I am not sure," I admitted. "It feels like stepping back into a world I fought so hard to escape, but you are not the same person who escaped," he said, taking my hand. "You would be walking back in as you are now. Strong, happy. Maybe that is a circle that needs closing." He was right. I decided to go. Ben came with me, his quiet presence a source of strength. As we walked into the reception hall, I felt a tremor of anxiety, but it passed quickly. This was Emily's day, and I was happy for her. I saw some familiar faces. A few aunts and uncles nodded at me politely. There was no animosity, just a kind of awkward respect. The elephant was in the room, but everyone was pretending it was not there. Then I saw them. Diana and Robert were sitting at a table near the front. They looked older. Robert had a sad, tired look about him. Diana looked diminished. The imperious confidence she once radiated was gone. She was just an older woman in a too bright dress, looking lost. Our eyes met across the room. She looked away quickly, a flicker of shame on her face. There was no victory in seeing her like that. There was just a quiet finality. Their reign was over. Mark was not there. Emily had told me when I RSVP'd that he was not invited. "It is my wedding," she had said firmly. "I want people there who represent love and honesty." He does not qualify. Her loyalty meant more to me than I could say. The wedding was beautiful. Seeing Emily so happy, marrying a good man, felt like a positive sign. It was a reminder that love and family could be a source of joy, not just pain. During the reception, Robert came over to our table. He shook Ben's hand. "It is good to see you, Clara," he said, his voice sincere. "You look well." "You too, Robert," I said. He looked at Ben, then back at me, and a small, sad smile touched his lips. "I am glad," he said, and then walked back to his table. It was a short, simple interaction, but it felt like a final handshake, a closing of a door. On the drive home, I was quiet. Ben did not press me to talk. He just held my hand. "Are you okay?" he finally asked as we pulled into my driveway. "I am," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was the complete truth. Seeing them, it did not hurt. It was like watching a movie I had seen a long time ago. The characters were familiar, but they did not have any power over me anymore. I realized then that my healing was complete. The anger was gone. The pain had faded into a scar that no longer ached. My story with Mark was no longer the central plot of my life. It was just the backstory, the prologue to a much better, richer story that I was now writing for myself, with characters who were kind and honest and real. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the word devoted. I had started my journey by pretending to be a devoted wife. I had thought devotion meant sacrificing your own feelings, your own intuition, for someone else. I had been wrong. True devotion is not about blindness. It is about seeing someone clearly, flaws and all, and choosing to love them. But first and foremost, it is about being devoted to yourself. Devoted to your own well-being, your own truth, your own peace. Mark had demanded a performance of devotion, and I had given him one. But my true devotion had been to the truth. It was a harder path, a more painful one, but it had led me here. To a life that was authentic, a love that was real, and a future that was bright and full of promise. The recordings had stopped long ago, but I had never stopped listening. I had learned to listen to the quiet voice inside me, the one that knows right from wrong, the one that knows what I deserve. And I would never, ever ignore that voice again. It was the only one that truly mattered.